Start. The National Savings Drive, as you know, sir, has a very important place in the present scheme of things, particularly in view of the present conditions of our national economy when we have to raise resources in a non inflationary manner. We have done everything to streamline the organization, and we have tried to get the cooperation of the state governments by providing greater incentives and linking the whole drive with the local schemes and accrual of resources to the states. It has been decided that whatever revenues accrue as a result of the intensification of the national savings drive, two-thirds of the net amount would go to the states. We have also decided that we will meet 50% of the additional expenditure to be incurred by the various state governments. I am trying to point out, sir, that this drive is at a point where it is gathering momentum and we expect much more from it. I do not think that at this stage we should burden the already overburdened Posts and Telegraphs Department with the administration of this big national scheme. It would not be advisable. Another point was that the P&T department was running at a loss and that it would minimize the loss of this department if this national savings scheme is entrusted to this department, by which it will get the commission. I would like to point out, sir, that at present a very substantial part of the national savings certificates are being sold through the post offices. Postal savings certificates from the bulk of the small savings, and the commission for them goes to the P&T department. During the last 3 years, an average of 2 crores has gone to the P&T department. The P&T department is already getting some revenue from this, and in order to popularize this scheme and in order to make it reach the rural areas, it is necessary to intensify the scheme under the present setup. That is the central government, the National Advisory Committee, the state government, etc., rather than to burden the Posts and Telegraphs Department and this additional task. Another point that he made was regarding a separate budget for the P&T department, just as the railways. Sir, the whole question of having a separate budget is a misnomer or a misdescription. During the last few years, as a result of the demand in Parliament, the budget memorandum as well as the annual financial statements have been elaborated and made clearer still to the layman by the addition of the explanatory memoranda and by showing the commercial accounts separately. If you read Article 112 of the Constitution, you will find that it provides for a consolidated fund into which all the revenues will be credited and from which all expenditure will be met. If you see the budget papers, you will find the railway revenues and expenditure finding a place in the annual financial statement. There is nothing like separate budgeting, although the mode of presentation may be different. Furthermore, these commercial departments are either incorporated under a special act of Parliament or are incorporated under the Indian Companies Act. Parliament has delegated powers so that it has not to present the detailed accounting to the Parliament. It has only concerned itself with the investments or the loans if the government makes any, and so accounts and financial statements are presented in a general form. Even therefore, on that score, the point that the honorable member was raised does not find much of a basis. He said something about the size and weight of the postcards. He said that if they could be reduced, much of the handling charges may be reduced. This invoices a lot of problems because of our postcards have been having the particular size for the last so many years, and we have to change the size. We will have to change the machinery which produces them. We produce about 100 cases per day. That is about 34,56,000 postcards every day, and we will have to change the machinery entirely. This machinery will have to be imported, which would mean foreign exchange, which is so very difficult to obtain at the present moment. Similarly, the paper board that comes will have to be changed in a specification, and the manufacturers will in turn have to change their machinery. It is a very involved process, and I think it would not be at the present moment a practical proposition to change the size of the postcards, however advantageous it might mean. The honorable member suggested our making the cards lighter so that the weight may be less. This also is not practicable because, as you know, the postcard is of a particular thickness, and through experience we have found that out to be of great value. The postcard is a bit roughly handled in sorting. It passes from place to place. Mr. Deputy Chairman, I would like to refer to some of the observations made in the course of the debate which relate to the Defence Ministry items. There they have been comments expressing concern in regard to the conditions and salaries of the officers and men of the armed forces. No one would contend that these conditions have either reached an extremely satisfactory stage, but defense, like everything else, has to be fitted into the general pattern of the country. The first question is what we can afford and what are the relative priorities. As one of the speakers said, the defense budget of this year is already 50 crores of rupees higher than last year, and it is likely to go further up if there are other difficulties. So while government keeps in view the possibility of improving these conditions in some cases from quickly, then in others the conditions at present cannot be said to be any worse than they were before, and it is not on account of any lack of concern or consideration that we have to postpone further improvements, but it is due to the state of the resources of the country. The armed forces have undergone no physical expansion, that is to say, the strength has not been increased, but there is a considerable amount of money expended year after year because of better equipment, more modern equipment, and also because of rise in prices of material, military or otherwise, in the world. A specific question about the officers has been raised, and it is suggested that we can make all the lieutenant colonels full colonels before they retire, and that colonels should command battalions. We are not refusing to have this practice just because it is not done elsewhere, but normally a battalion commander is a lieutenant colonel everywhere. If we were to convert all these lieutenant colonels into full colonels, a large number of officers will get colonel's rank, and their pensions, even if they serve for 20 years, would be 100 rupees a month more than the others, and at the present moment the country cannot afford it. Another point raised was that they are retired so early that it is a hardship. It is true that they can retire at 40, but most of them do continue in the services. The age of retirement, as against in private industries, is early. It is not necessary for me to labor this point much further, except to inform the House that these promotions and other appointments inside the armed forces are made with extreme care according to established procedures, and is not done in a haphazard way. There have been few complaints about these matters, and government is satisfied that these promotions are made with due consideration to all the circumstances mentioned here. The next point, of which numerous inquiries are made is in regard to the procurement of equipment. All of us regard that as an objective, that is to say, self-sufficiency in regard to the equipment and in regard to various other allied matters. But there again, defense equipment cannot be separated from the industrial conditions of the country. Our demand for a particular item is often so small that we cannot set up a factory for the production and make it economical. It would produce ever so much more by its capacity that we can consume under modern conditions of industrial technique. It should not, however, be thought that on account of these difficulties no attempt is made towards further and further Indianization and more indigenous production. At the present moment, a committee under the chairmanship of the Deputy Defence Minister has been going intensively into this question of how far in our various ordnance factories, in factories under civil production and in other factories connected with the defense industry, and by the use of the defense personnel itself, it would be possible to make whole or parts of equipment of this country. Being military equipment, apart from giving a general idea, neither the category nor the numbers of them may be published, but this is a matter that is receiving the continuous attention of the Defense Ministry in all its branches, and we hope that in the 12 months ahead we will be able to make considerable progress. I hope the House will accept this statement and the efforts that we are making as a planned effort in the direction of self-sufficiency. There has been some criticism in regard to the cantonments, and I would like to refer to this because more than once this point has been raised. In this matter, Mr. Deputy Chairman, there is some misunderstanding about the position of these cantonments. Some members appear to look upon them as a relic of British rule. In any army like ours, these cantonments are essential. They are really military estates. Originally, they were so started because the army had to kept isolated from the people, perhaps under the conditions which would keep them fit for the purpose. Full stop. Over.